Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Human Stories, we retell those moments, honest every day, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. At noon, the light in Santa Fe turned silver and hard, the adobe walls across the street seeming to sweat. In my shop, sage and thread, the air smelled of dried sage and cinnamon. The kettle on the back burner began to hiss. I turned the flame down and told myself it was only water and steam. The bell over the door tapped the glass. Grace stepped in and lifted a hand that looked too thin. She wore a long-sleeve blouse the color of milk wrong for the heat. Her smile was tidy like a picture frame hanging slightly crooked. "You're early," I said. "Lucky me." School let out after a fire drill. She laughed a little. The laugh had no weight. "Your tea is the only reward I believe in." I poured sweet tea over ice. When I set the glass in front of her, the cuff of her blouse rode up. For 1 second, her wrist was bare, blistered skin, the edge irregular, angry. My fingers tightened around the pitcher until the ice clinked like small bones. "What happened to your arm?" I heard my voice and did not recognize it. She tugged the sleeve down too fast. "Hot coffee," I spilled. "I'm such a mess." "Coffee leaves a ring," I said. "That looks like a map." Her eyes slid to the window. "Mom, I'm fine, really." She picked up the glass and drank as if sweet and cold could drown the burn. Theo came in at a sprint, sneakers tapping the old wood. He always forgot to close the door behind him. He went straight to the low table where I kept crayons and a pad just for him. He drew a saguaro and gave it extra arms. I waited until Grace went to the bathroom to wash her hands. I crouched so my eyes met Theo's. "How is your dad?" Theo swung his legs. He did not look up. He yells a lot. "What does that look like?" His face gets red, like a chili. He glanced toward the hall, furtive now, as if the sound of water could not be trusted. Yesterday he threw the kettle. It went psst on the floor. Mommy cried. The kettle on my stove hissed louder at that exact moment. I reached back and killed the flame. Grace came back with her sleeve still down. She hugged me at the door when they left. Her body was tense as rope pulled too tight. Theo waved from the sidewalk, his smile floating ahead of him like a paper boat in a storm gutter. I stood in the quiet and watched heat blur the far end of the street. Threads of red silk hung from the loom by the window. One had snagged on a nail. I freed it, wound it around my finger until the tip went white, then let it slip. Night left its small cool on the tiles, but I could not sleep. The dark felt shallow. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone and the old address book my husband had kept the pages soft as cloth from years of use. The kettle was back on the stove. I did not light it. I called Pierce. His number was still in my contacts from Christmases and birthdays, and that one time my sink flooded, and he sent a man within an hour. The line rang. When he answered, he used the voice he kept for people he thought he owned. "Alma, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I saw Grace's arm. Silence 3 beats. I counted them and felt each one land. "So what if you did?" he said. His voice changed shape. "What exactly do you think you can do about it?" "You run a ribbon shop." "I think I can count," I said. "Once is a mistake, twice is a pattern. The kettle was on the floor yesterday." He laughed softly. "Grace is clumsy. Kitchens are tricky. Leave family matters to family." "You mean to the Caldwells?" "You said it, not me." The line clicked, not a goodbye, a period. My hands shook. I placed the phone on the table and watched the glassy black go dull under the kitchen light. Then I opened the address book with its curled corner where an old tea stain had bled into paper like a tiny sun. Jack Doyle was 3 pages in. Pencil, not ink, a number from a decade ago. I dialed. The ring sound carried me back to a barbecue where my husband stood beside a man with a square jaw and eyes that missed little men talking in low tones about what could be done when the straight path was blocked. "Doyle," a voice said. "It's Alma Navarro," I said. "James is Alma." A pause, then warmth not given to many. "Long time. I need help. Tell me one sentence." "My son-in-law burns my daughter and thinks his family name is a shield." Another pause, heavier. "Meet me tomorrow, rail yard, by the Iron Water Tower, 11. The call ended. I sat a while longer. The house held the kind of quiet that sounds like someone listening. I got up and took the kettle off the stove and set it in the sink. I did not want to hear it hiss. Morning came with light that made the dust in the shop look like galaxies. I opened at 9. Tourists drifted in with hats and cameras. I stood at the counter and threaded a needle with red. My hands remembered how to be steady. Grace did not come. She texted a heart and the words "busy morning, love you." I answered with a picture of a basket half woven and the words "come by later if you can." At 10:50, I closed the shop and flipped the sign to back in 30. The square of sun on the floor moved an inch while I locked the door. Outside, heat rushed up off the sidewalk. A street musician plucked a guitar with long desert slow notes. I walked toward the rail yard. The iron water tower lifted against the blue like a monument to thirst. I saw Jack first by the posture. Not tall, but arranged like someone used to making himself part of the background. He wore a plain linen shirt and sunglasses he could have bought anywhere. He did not hug me. We were not huggers. He nodded, then pointed to a bench in the shade. "You look the same," he said. "You look like a man who knows how to keep secrets. I know how to find them." He took the envelope I had brought. Inside were photographs I had taken with my old phone while Grace slept on my couch 2 weeks ago when she said she was too tired to drive home. Her arm then had looked like a coastline seen from far above. Jack held the photos at the edges. His jaw tightened once. "He is bold," he said. "He is careless," I said. "I will need names," he said. "Housekeeper, driver, anyone who hears walls talk. I can ask," I said, quietly. He nodded. "And Alma, do not call him again." "I already did," I said. He hung up. "That is not a door you want open." We sat a minute more. A train went by, slow, the wheels clicking in measure. The sound made me think of a loom working warp and weft lines crossing to make something that holds. I walked back alone and let the heat sit on my shoulders. The plaza had filled with people. I kept my eyes on the shade ahead. The bell over my door tapped once when I pushed it in. The shop smelled like it always did, sage and cotton, and a trace of cinnamon baked into the wood. In the window, the loom stood still. I cut a length of red thread and tied it to the top beam, a small flag in a place only I would notice. I counted bills in the till and found a paperclip shaped like a heart that Theo must have left. I slid it onto the edge of the register. Small rituals, small anchors. At 4, I was sweeping by the front when the hair on my arms prickled. A car had eased into the space across the street. Black sedan. Windows tinted so dark they looked poured, not installed. It idled and did not flash turn signals and did not do anything at all. It simply existed. The kind of existence that felt like a stare. I stood very still. The broom bristles made a dry sound against the wood. A breath fogged the inside of the glass as I leaned in without meaning to. I watched and waited for nothing to happen. The sedan waited back. The kettle was not on at home. I had made sure of it. Outside, the light shifted. A low sun gilded the roof lines. The car's headlights blinked once as if agreeing with itself. Then the motor softened to a purr I felt in my wrists. I let the broom rest against the counter. I did not move closer to the window. Across the glass, the sedan did not leave. The sedan did not move. It pressed into the afternoon like a thumb on a bruise. I kept working anyway, stitching leaves on linen napkins, threading red through the soft weave, until the light thinned and turned the shop window into a mirror. When I flipped the sign to close, the car eased forward a few feet, just enough to say, "I see you." I wrote the partial plate on a receipt and tucked it under the register. Then I locked up and walked home on a route with people and motion and light. The heat held tight to the stucco walls. A boy on a skateboard scissored past and laughed. Ordinary sounds. I let them fill the spaces where fear wanted to sit. I left the kettle in the cabinet. Tea did not sound like comfort anymore. Sleep did not come easy either. The ceiling fan ticked in a rhythm I counted and lost and counted again. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of red thread that would not stay knotted. Morning brought a pale wash of light and the smell of dust that had drifted in under the door. I opened the shop at 9 and turned the small television on for background noise. The local station cut from weather to a live shot outside a federal building in Albuquerque. A company logo slid across the bottom of the screen. Caldwell Engineering. The reporter talked about contracts and bids and anonymous tips. B-roll showed Pierce walking fast, jaw set a lawyer at his elbow. The caption said no comment. Customers came and went. A tourist couple admired a woven wall hanging. A young man bought 2 embroidered handkerchiefs and asked if I could stitch initials by Friday. I smiled. I measured. My hands did the work they have always known. Just past noon, the bell over the door rang with a different kind of energy. A woman in a tidy blazer stepped in with a cameraman behind her, and a microphone already lifted. Kara Whitman from KQSF 7. I had seen her on the screen an hour earlier. "Mrs. Navarro," she said, bright and sympathetic at once. "Do you have a moment to talk about the investigation into Caldwell Engineering and whether there have been any concerns raised about domestic issues within the Caldwell family?" "Not here," I said. I kept my voice even. "Not with a camera in my shop." "People will read your silence as an answer," she said. "They can read what they like," I said. "You need to leave." Her smile faltered. She glanced at the shelves, at the neat stacks and the small price tags, then put the smile back in place. "If you change your mind, we are listening." She set a card on the counter as if it were a gift. The cameraman panned once across the room and then lowered his shoulder rig. When they walked out, the bell sounded like a scoop set on metal. My phone buzzed. "Grace, did you see the news?" "Yes. He says it is lies. He is so angry. Are you safe right now?" "He is at the office with his lawyers." "Come here." "Can't. The more I look like routine, the less he notices." I stared at the screen until the letters went to sleep. Then I went to the back shelf and took down a jar of aloe. I held it a moment. I put it back. By late afternoon, I could not sit with the waiting any longer. I took my keys and a jar of quince jam I had made last month. A gift is a pretext. I drove out toward the Caldwell house, past galleries and adobe homes and a sign for a trailhead the tourists liked. The road climbed a little and then leveled where the houses got large and the driveways long. Their place announced its importance with a strip of white stone and a gate that made expensive whirring sounds when it slid back. The desert landscaping looked like a curated version of the land beyond Agave, and yucca arranged on gravel raked into lines you were not meant to disturb. A man at the door wore a suit jacket and a radio in his ear. He took the jam with careful fingers and set it on a table like a bomb that might go off. "Mrs. Navarro Pierce said, coming into the foyer as if he had been waiting. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of polish and something floral that was not real. There were framed photographs on the wall, family posed in places that cost money to reach. Grace smiled from one of them, her head tipped toward him. Theo held a seashell in 2 hands like a prize. "I brought something sweet," I said. "How thoughtful," he said. He did not look at the jar. "Grace is resting. She is not up for visitors." "I will be quick." He considered. He adjusted a cuff. 5 minutes. He led me down a hallway where the rugs absorbed footfalls. In the living room, Grace sat on the edge of a white sofa with her hands in her lap. Her blouse had short sleeves. Her arms were smooth and unmarked. For a second, my eyes could not make sense of what they saw. "Hi, Mom," she said, too bright. Her eyes moved past me to the window and back. "Where is Theo?" I asked. "With Mother," Pierce said. "They love their time together." "Your mother takes him often," I said. "That is generous." "It is family," he said. "You understand." Grace stood and crossed the space between us. Up close, I could see a faint dusting of powder near the edge of her sleeve, a tone just off from her skin. She pressed her cheek to mine, and I felt the tremor she was trying to keep in her backbone. "It looks worse than it is," she whispered into my hair. "Do not make it worse." "I will make dinner," I said, pulling back. "Come by later if you can." "Busy tonight," Pierce said. "We have calls." "Of course," I said. I set the jam on a console and left without looking again at his face. Outside, the sun had shifted. Heat radiated off the stone walk and made the air ripple. I sat in my car without turning the key for a count of 5, then drove back to town with the window down and the sound of tires on road as loud as I could stand it. The sedan was not in front of my shop when I returned. It had moved half a block down, tucked into shade cast by a cottonwood. I watched the mirror for a shape in the driver's seat and saw only dark glass. The hair at the back of my neck prickled anyway. I kept the television on low. The news anchor repeated what the reporter had said that morning and added 2 new words: federal inquiry. The graphic changed to show a courthouse and a stamp that said investigation. 2 hours later, it changed again. Whistleblower. At closing, I wrote the day in my ledger, numbers and words marching together in the way that calms me. I turned the sign and checked the lock. When I reached the corner, I looked back. The sedan had not moved. A small dot of burnt orange sunset reflected in the passenger window and then went out. I cooked because there is steadiness in it. Onions in a pan oil talking in small pops. I reached for the kettle and stopped myself and filled a pot instead. Steam rose in a pale ribbon and disappeared. I tasted with a wooden spoon and did not add salt. The phone rang at 9. I answered before the second ring. "Doyle," he said. "Yes." "I have movement." "What kind?" I asked. He listed like a man stacking stones. Contracts bid at 200% over market. A shell company in Delaware that owns a shell in the Caymans. A city council member who took a trip to Telluride on a corporate card. Times, dates, payment trails. I will send none of it by text. You will see what you need to see when I bring it to the right eyes. I closed my eyes to steady the room. The right eyes. Eyes that are not impressed by money, he said. They exist. Grace is scared, I said. She should be careful, he said. She will not leave, I said. She should look ordinary, he said. He paused. When he spoke again, his tone shifted in a way I had heard on a day long ago, when James had come home with a face like someone had tested his faith. Alma, do not change your habits in a way that announces anything. Let him think he holds every string. Strings break, I said. They do, he said, especially if you cut them one by one. I could hear traffic on his end and a gull or a laugh that could have been one. Jack, I said. The car outside my shop. I know, he said. Is it yours, I asked. Silence, then a tired exhale, not mine. So whose, I asked. Alma, he said, careful now. You are not alone in being watched. By whom, I asked. That is the wrong question, he said. The right one is whether you want the watching to work for you. Can it, I asked. It can, he said. Paper rustled near his mouth, then quiet. You will likely see a reporter again. You will likely see your errand boy from the Caldwells. You will see people who look like neighbors. Treat them all the same. Give them nothing. You are asking me to sit still, I said. I am asking you to keep your spine, he said. He cleared his throat. I have what I need to turn the wheel. I looked at the red thread tied to the corner of the kitchen corkboard. It was only an inch long, and yet it drew the eye from across the room. I reached up and touched it. It felt like nothing. It felt like control. When I asked. It has begun, he said. The line went quiet except for the small sound a phone makes when someone is still there and still listening. I stood with the receiver against my cheek and thought of Pierce's polished smile, of Grace's powder-dusted skin, of Theo drawing a cactus with too many arms. On the far side of the house, the refrigerator motor kicked on and held a single low note. I placed the phone gently in its cradle and turned off the kitchen light. The window showed me my own reflection with the thread behind my shoulder like a mark on glass. Morning came thin and bright. I unlocked sage and thread and opened the blinds. Dust rose and glittered. I had just set a row of napkins along the counter when the doorbell tapped and a woman stepped in with a small leather folder held close to her ribs. Mrs. Navarro, she said. Her tone was even. Naomi Chen, Assistant United States Attorney. Back room, I said. I lifted the half door and led her past the shelves to the table by the window where the loom sat quiet. The red thread I had tied there caught the light. Naomi set her folder down and did not look around. She took out a recorder, a pen, a small box of tissues she left to one side. Her suit was the color of sand. Her shoes did not make sound on the old floor. I am here because people are talking, she said. Contracts, bribes. Also because harm at home is often where it is quietest. I will need medical documentation of your daughter's injuries. I will need names of anyone who has seen or heard. I can help you ask for those things. She is scared, I said. Most people in her position are scared, Naomi said. We work with fear all the time. We do not remove it. We make room for it to sit, and we keep moving. She slid a card to me. The edges were sharp enough to catch. Today I can take a preliminary statement from you, she said. Nothing formal. Facts that fix in place what you have seen. Then I will arrange an exam with a doctor who documents injuries for the court. Your daughter will decide what to show and what to say. We do not drag her. I nodded. The red thread quivered in a draft that came from nowhere. I told Naomi what I had seen. The skin at Grace's wrist raised and angry. The way she tugged her sleeve down. The sound Theo made when he said the word kettle. Pierce on the phone, his voice like a lock. Who else? Naomi asked. The housekeeper, I said. A driver, a gardener. Do you know their names? She said. First names, I said. That can be enough to start. Start is all I need, she said. She clicked off the recorder and closed the folder. At the door, she paused. I am not impressed by money, she said. Tell your friend who brings me files that he is not the only one who believes in straight lines. When she left, the shop felt smaller. I stood by the window and watched a woman cross the street with a dog that looked like a dust mop. The dog blinked at the heat and kept walking. I called a number that had once been on a magnet on Grace's refrigerator. The housekeeper answered on the second ring, voice flat with caution. This is Alma, I said. We spoke at Christmas. I brought tamales. I remember, she said. I need to ask if you've seen Marks, I said, if you have heard anything at night. Silence. The hush of a television in another room, a door closing somewhere far away. I see what everyone sees, she said at last, but I do not want trouble. Naomi will speak to you at a place that is not your job, I said. You will not be alone. She let out a breath. I heard crying, she said. I saw towels with blood once. I pretended to bleach everything twice. Thank you, I said. You will be careful. I called the driver next. He told me he had learned to turn the radio up when they were a block away so the child would not hear the last of the yelling. By afternoon, Naomi texted a time and an address. A clinic off Cerrillos Road that shared a parking lot with a laundromat and a place that sold snow cones in every color. I wrote the street name on a receipt and drove to Grace's school. She came out to my car during her prep period. Her mouth made a line when she saw the address. Mom, she said. This is not a trap, I said. You can leave at any point. You decide what is seen. I cannot, she said. If I do, he will take Theo. He is already taking pieces, I said. She looked at her hands. Her nails were clean and short, the nails of a person who lives around children. She said nothing more. She nodded once and got in. The clinic air smelled like sanitizer and something old. A nurse in blue scrubs met us with a clipboard and the kind of voice that made room for shame without feeding it. She led us to a small room where a camera sat on a tripod and a ruler lay beside a roll of paper tape. I will call out each area and place a marker, the nurse said. You can choose to stop or skip. Grace stared at the wall. The nurse placed the paper strip by the first scar and took a photo with a device that clicked like a toy. Grace breathed through her nose. Sweat rose at the edge of her hairline and held there. First was a spoon, Grace said. The word surprised both of us. Her voice was low and steady. He heated it on the stove and pressed it when I spilled on his paper. He said I needed to be more careful. The nurse wrote, click. The flash was gentle but unkind. Then water, Grace said, then more water. I held the edge of her shirt when she lifted it so the nurse could see her collarbone. The skin there was newer and redder. I did not say anything. The nurse nodded once as if we all knew exactly what a bruise can hold. We left through a side door. In the lot, a gust of wind pushed grit into our shoes. Grace leaned against the car and pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. She lowered them and looked at me. If I talk, she said, he will say I am trying to ruin him. You told the truth, I said. That is not the same thing in that house, she said. I drove her back to the school. She went in through the office like it was any day. I watched the door close behind her and sat a while with my hands on the steering wheel and my feet flat as if the car were a ground I could hold. At Sage and Thread, the bell rang and rang. Customers came with small needs and questions. Around 2, the glass gave back a reflection I recognized before I turned. Virginia Caldwell stood in the doorway with Theo's hand in hers. She wore pearls and a face that had not slept. Just for a minute, she said. He wanted to see the crayons. Theo ran to his table. Virginia stood where the sunlight did not touch. She took off her sunglasses and left them on her purse. Pierce is under stress, she said. She watched Theo draw a train where the wheels were too big and the track went nowhere. He is not himself. I think he is exactly himself, I said. She looked at me then. The mask did not shift. Only the eyes moved a small flicker like light behind water. I will bring him back at 6, she said. Dinner is at my house. That is an open invitation. The boy can eat anywhere, I said. Not if I say he cannot, she said. The way she said it sounded like a woman asking herself whom she had become. She touched Theo's hair once, then left. The television in the back room had been on mute. At 4, I turned the volume up. Live feed outside the federal building in Albuquerque. Reporters fanned in a half circle. The front doors opened and men in windbreakers appeared. Between them, Pierce walked fast with his chin high and his hands cuffed in front. A lawyer talked at the microphones about presumption of innocence. Someone shouted a question about offshore accounts and public contracts. Pierce looked straight into a camera lens as if it were a person and said through his small smile, "It is not over." I stood very still. The red thread on the loom did not move at all. That evening, Naomi came back to the shop after closing. She set her folder on the counter and took out a form that already knew where the lines would be. "Your statement," she said. "We keep it clean." She recorded. I spoke. The pencil on her pad kept time with my words. The facts felt like stones, and I put them down one by one and did not try to arrange them. Grace arrived after dark, face-pale body, walking like she had been thinking about it all the way over. Naomi greeted her like a colleague and offered water that she did not take. "I want it to end," Grace said. Her voice had a quiet weight. "I will say what happened." Naomi nodded. "We will take it slow," she said. "You will say only what you choose to say." Grace told it in a set of small rooms in my shop, where I sew buttons and tie ribbons. She told it with pauses that were longer than sentences. She told it with her eyes on the seam of the wood floor. Naomi did not rush her. When it was over, Grace signed her name. The pen shook once and then was still. I walked her to the door. The street was empty except for the cottonwood that always pulled the same shadow across the curb. In the distance, I heard a train. It sounded patient. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No words. A single image. A view of my storefront from above, taken from a height that made the roofline look like a shelf, and the sidewalk like a ribbon. At the curb, a black sedan was parked so cleanly within the lines it looked drawn. The text bubble showed nothing else. The photo waited and filled the screen. I stood very still. The glass at the door reflected my face with the red thread behind me like a mark on a map that someone else had drawn. The photo sat on my screen like a dare. Roofline, small sidewalk, a pale ribbon, the black sedan drawn inside the curb as neatly as a diagram. I powered the phone off and felt the room return to its own size. The red thread on the loom caught a line of streetlight and held it. The days that followed moved with the patience of legal calendars and the speed of rumors. Subpoenas arrived. Men in jackets with clipped badges came and went. Naomi called from hallways that echoed. Jack did not text. He appeared when he needed to left when he had given me what I had to know. The courthouse in Albuquerque was colder than it needed to be. Grace wore a dress with sleeves that ended at the elbow. She stood outside the courtroom with her hands folded and her breath steady the way a teacher stands before a class and waits them quiet. Naomi touched her shoulder with 2 fingers, then let her go. Inside, 2 flags made a border for the judge who watched everything and gave nothing away. The air smelled of paper and old coffee. When Grace took the stand, the room changed shape around her. "Please tell the court what happened," Naomi said. Grace did not look at Pierce. She fixed her eyes on a knot in the wood rail and spoke to that small flaw. She told the story in clean lines. Insults. A hand that did not stop at air. A spoon heated until the metal went dull. Water poured that should have been poured into a cup. She lifted her collar so the newest mark could be seen and counted. The court reporter watched her hands and transcribed the words as if pinning butterflies to a page. The housekeeper spoke. She had iron towels that would not turn white again. The driver spoke. He had learned to park where the child could not see the man's face. I spoke. I told about the kettle sound in my own kitchen and the day I tried not to see what I saw. When I said Pierce's name, he smiled at me as if we were sharing a private joke and then looked away. Virginia entered with her pearls clutched in one hand. She sat back, straight eyes set on the dark wood of the witness stand. When Naomi asked if she had known about her son's temper, she said yes in a voice that sounded like a window closing. "And did you act?" Naomi asked. "I learned not to," she said. "That is not an answer. It is what happened." Pierce watched all of it with a composure that felt like something polished each morning. When the judge read the sentence, the numbers fell into the room without softness. 18 for harm at home, 12 for the money and the contracts, 30 in all. Pierce did not bow his head. He looked at me for a long second and said nothing. His mouth made the shape of an old phrase. Then the deputy took his arm. At home that night, the air held the taste of rain that had not fallen yet. I sat at the table and looked at the phone without wanting it to ring. It rang anyway. Jack's voice was rough at the edges. He tried, Jack said. He and 2 others. They will move him. I closed my eyes for a count of 3. Grace and Theo. Sleep at your house, he said. Keep lights on at night. Move during the day. Move, I said. Take what matters, he said. Leave what does not. We did not speak of cities or routes. We did not speak of how a life packs itself. We spoke of basic things that take up space and of the weight they put in a car. The road east opened and then opened again. We crossed land that changed color in bands, plains that looked ironed, rivers that hid in cottonwoods. We drove in a car that did not draw attention and stopped where the coffee was hot and the bathrooms clean. Theo drew in a spiral-bound notebook with the motion of a hand that knows how to disappear into lines. He drew a water tower that looked like the one where I had met Jack. He drew a cactus with too many arms and then erased one. Savannah arrived with wet air and trees that wore their own light. Spanish moss hung like a quiet language. The house we found had a porch that let you sit close to rain without being in it. The floorboards had a voice. A room at the back took a table and a lamp and a loom. I tied a new length of red thread at the top and watched it pull straight. Grace found a classroom where the children knew 2 tongues and used both. Theo discovered a park where boys learned to play chess under oaks and did not say much until they won. I set up a few baskets and napkins at a small market that smelled of shrimp and sugar. I called it Loom House, a name that could be an invitation without being too eager. The black sedan did not belong here, but it did. A week passed, and the ordinary sounds of our street made a nest around us. Then one day, a car chose a place across the corner and did not quite fit into the shade. Its paint held the reflection of the live oaks. I saw a shape behind the glass that was only a silhouette. I swept the porch and pretended to care about the direction of the leaves. The car stayed. It left. It returned at a different hour, trailing quiet. Theo saw the man first. We were coming out of the market with a paper bag that smelled of peaches and cilantro. Theo tugged my sleeve and made his eyes small. That man was at my school, he said. He did not point. He stood by the mural and did not look at it. Across the street, a man in a neat shirt and dark glasses read nothing on his phone. He had a stillness that is not rest. We told Naomi. She flew down and did not book a hotel with a lobby bar. She took a car that did not call itself a car. Jack arrived 2 days after without luggage. He touched the porch rail as if testing grain. You cannot be everywhere, he said. So you set the room. You set yourself. He drove me to a range in a sandy place where the air shivered above the berms. The revolver felt heavier than it looked. The instructor had a hat that did not say anything except that it could keep off sun. He showed me where to place my grip. He made me shoot slow. He made me breathe. The first shot jerked up my arm like a question. The second found its way back to the center of the paper chest. The third went low into the paper thigh. I learned the taste of smoke and the patience of a sight picture. I do not want this, I said as we cleaned the cylinder with a small blue cloth. I know, Jack said. Want is not the word for it. At home we agreed on nothing spoken aloud. We moved in patterns that looked ordinary. We let the porch light click on at dusk as if it had always been set for that hour. The sedan made its rounds and learned ours. It came on a Sunday morning when Grace and Theo had left for church. The back door made a sound too careful to be an accident. The kitchen held the cool of tile and the faint citrus of the cleaner we used because it left no streaks. I opened the drawer where the oven mitts lived. The revolver sat under a folded towel. My hand did not shake when I picked it up. My breath went low and wide as if I had been practicing for years. He stepped in with the confidence of a man who believes doors are suggestions. Archer Caldwell wore a linen jacket and a smile built in a mirror. Up close, he smelled like cologne and air travel. Mrs. Navarro, he said, as if about to offer a business card. We finally meet. What do you want, I said. Pierce sends regards, he said. He is not a man who forgets. He asked me to stop by to take back something he lost. He had a knife that did not look large until you thought about what knives do. He held it like someone who had learned from a video and liked the way it made him feel. He walked past the sink and touched the rim of a bowl with his free hand, as if checking for dust. The siren of a patrol car sounded very far away. He heard it too. His smile fell a few inches and stayed there. You planned a welcome, he said. You walked into one, I said. He moved fast. I did not think. I did what a hand knows how to do when a body is in danger. The first shot took his shoulder off its job. The second dropped his leg from under him. The knife clattered and spun to the toe of the stove. Archer made a sound that could have been a word. I stepped back and kept the gun on his chest until the air filled with footfalls and voices, and the room did not belong to me anymore. Naomi came through the door behind two officers who had the kind of focus that makes a room small. She took in Archer, the knife, the gun in my grip, the angle of my feet. "Set it on the counter," she said, voice flat. I did. An officer kicked the knife away and picked it up with 2 fingers through a cloth. Archer watched the ceiling while the medic bound what needed binding. He tried to look like a man inconvenienced. It did not land. Jack's head appeared around the doorframe. He did not enter. He met my eyes and nodded once the way you nod at a bell that has rung on time. They found the letters in the hotel room under Archer's name. Thick paper with a pen that scratched hard. Instructions written in a hand that did not believe anyone would ever see it. Times, locations, the names of the people who had made it a point to tell the truth in the Albuquerque courtroom. Naomi set the pages on my kitchen table, not for me to read, only for me to know their weight existed. The edges were clean. The words were not. "We will charge conspiracy," she said. "This is a stitch that holds." Sirens faded. The officers left ink prints on my tile that I wiped up with a wet cloth. The red thread I had tied to the corner of the kitchen corkboard looked smaller than before. Grace and Theo came home to a porch crowded with a world they did not wish to recognize. Grace reached for me without asking. Theo stood in the doorway, eyes too wide, trying to measure this new shape of his grandmother. "You are hurt," he said. "I am fine," I said. My hands shook after I said it. He noticed, then looked away to give me back what I had tried to keep. Night was heavy with magnolia when they finally left. The house felt larger, and also thinner. I sat on the porch and listened to the low talk of a neighbor a few doors down, and the click of a bicycle chain passing on the street. Naomi stepped out with her jacket folded over her arm. "There will be more papers," she said. "A judge will hear what needs to be heard." I nodded. The Spanish moss moved as if breathing. After she went, the porch fell into its own quiet. The phone on the table lit with a vibration I felt through the wood. A new message, no words. A subject line with 2 short ones, "Not over." The subject line glowed on the screen, "Not over." Naomi took my phone in both hands like a delicate tool and read without touching the image. Later, she called from a number I did not have and said the message came from a device registered to Archer's room. It joined the stack of paper. She did not let me see proof that words can be weapons when a person has run out of better ones. The next days moved in a rhythm that did not ask permission. Officers came with calm steps and left with sealed bags. Naomi spoke to a judge who signed where the law said to sign. Archer went from a hospital bed to a cell with white paint. Pierce faced new charges he could not shrug off. Cameras found our street. We did not open the door. Heat lay over Savannah like a hand. The live oaks made their own weather. The porch fan ticked. I set the loom in the back room and let its wooden voice return to the house. Red thread waited on the beam. When I pulled it through linen, the sound soothed the day. A woman came to the market with purple under one eye and a slow way of breathing. She did not touch anything at first. She stood by a basket and read the tag twice. When the crowd thinned, I asked if she wanted water. She nodded and drank in 3 careful swallows. "My name is Alma," I said. "I run a small circle in the back on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We make things. We sit quiet. Nobody asks why you came." She looked at the basket again. Her fingers were steady when she set it down. "Gabby," she said, "I could sit." In the back room I gave her a hoop and a needle threaded with red. Her hands trembled at first. The needle found the cloth. The line began to hold. I kept my own needle moving so the silence did not feel like a test. When she was ready, we talked about thread and thimbles and how to wash linen without pulling it out of shape. I asked nothing else. She stayed past closing and left with the hoop in her tote, a small square of fabric marked by a single patient row. At home, the kettle sat on the counter clean and dry. I set it on the burner and filled it and did not turn the flame. I touched the handle and left it there. The metal was cool. Naomi called again at dusk. I stepped onto the porch to take it. The air smelled of river and cut grass. "Archer has been charged," she said. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. The letters do what we needed. And the message, I said. Traced, she said. It will sit in the file where it belongs. Her voice softened a notch. There will be noise. If you need me to stand at a microphone so you do not have to, I will. I need you to keep doing what you are doing, I said. She let out a breath I could hear. Then I will. After that, the street settled. The car that did not belong did not return. People went back to walking dogs that liked to sniff the same patch of grass each day. Theo rode his bike to the park and learned to check for cars at the cross street, without me telling him twice. Weeks turned in the low, bright way summer does when it is working. Loom House grew from a table to a room. Women came with quiet backs and left with straight shoulders. We built shelves that did not need to be perfect to stay up. We colored the wall with squares of cloth like prayer flags without words. Gabby arrived early one morning with a bruise fading to green and a list of things she would not take. I gave her a stool and a cup of chamomile. Naomi stopped by at noon with a plain folder and a name of someone who could help with forms the kind that make people feel small. She did not stay long. She touched the red thread with one finger and left it humming in place. On a wet afternoon, the phone rang in the echoing way of a call you are not ready to take. Naomi's voice came through clean. He is dead, she said. The wood of the counter felt warm under my hand. I did not know which he until she said the rest. Pierce, suicide in his cell. It appears to be by his own hand. There is a note. I stood in the doorway and watched the rain make dotted lines on the porch steps. What does it say? Only a line that mentions you, she said. 2 words. You won. Rain hit the eaves like fingers tapping. In the yard, a squirrel made a dash across wet grass and left it shaking. Will there be more? I asked. There will be less, she said. She brought the note a day later inside an envelope she did not let me keep. I read the scrawl and handed it back. The letters leaned too far to one side. Naomi tucked them into a folder that closed with a whisper. I built a small fire in the metal ring behind the house that night and fed it with coals until it carried a quiet orange. I took out the wooden box from the back of the closet and set it on the table. The revolver lay inside like a question I had already answered. I remembered the weight of it when Archer stepped through my door. I remembered the smoke that tasted of iron. I unscrewed what could be unscrewed. I set each piece in a dishcloth and wiped oil that held a smell like a machine shop. The spring clicked against my thumbnail. The cylinder rolled and tapped the wood. I worked without hurry. The pile became parts. The parts became shapes that did not threaten anyone without a will to assemble them. The next day, I walked the city with a brown paper bag. I did not look over my shoulder. I did not go far. I knew the places by the way they sounded. The clink of bottles at the recycling bin behind a grocery. The thud of a metal donation box outside a thrift store where wind chimes tinkled without melody. The hush under a bridge where water slid by like a thought. I left a small weight each place and kept moving. By noon, the bag held only the cloth. Grace learned her new classroom by heart. The children laughed in 2 languages and made better jokes in both. She came home smelling of chalk and fruit snacks. Theo grew taller by fits and starts and filled a sketchbook with courthouses and trees and tiny people with ties. He stood at the sink one night drying plates and said without looking up, I want to learn the rules. All of them. I want to know how to make them work. Then learn them, I said. He nodded as if we had agreed on a chore. The television kept finding our faces. We kept closing it. Neighbors knew enough to be kind without asking for details. Jack returned to his own shadows and called now and then, from numbers that would not stay. When he did, he asked about the porch paint and whether the fan had stopped its small tick. He sent no more instructions. He did not need to. The kettle finally boiled. It did not scream. It murmured. I lifted it before the pitch turned sharp and poured water into 2 cups that went foggy at the rim. Grace came to the table and wrapped both hands around one and breathed the steam. It smelled like mint from the little pot by the back steps. We drank in the quiet that is earned. Months stepped past. The air shifted. The moss held dew in the morning and light in the afternoon. Loom House became a place people told each other about without saying its name out loud. We stitched, we cut, We threaded needles through days. Some women stayed and some left. A few came back to teach what their hands now knew. The wall of squares grew into a quilt that made the room feel like a kept promise. On my 70th birthday, Grace planned a small dinner in the yard. Naomi came with a pie from a shop that had a line. Jack appeared at dusk in a shirt that looked new, and a gift that looked old, a thimble of heavy silver that fit my finger as if it had been measured. Theo strung lights in the magnolia and set out mismatched plates from a box I had not opened since Santa Fe. The air was soft and carried a thread of trumpet from a porch 3 houses over. We ate grilled corn and bread that cracked under butter. We told small stories that did not require anyone to be brave. When the plates were cleared, Grace stood with a glass and searched my face like she was finding a page. She did not make a speech. She lifted the glass and said to my mother, "That was enough." The clink of glasses sounded like a bell rung well. Theo lifted his own glass of lemonade. To the rules, he said, a little smile at the corner, and to learning them better than anyone who uses them to be cruel. The lights caught the red thread I had tied long ago to the corner of the porch. I cut a length and looped it around Grace's wrist. I cut one for Theo. He let me tie it and pretended to mind. Jack held out his hand and allowed a small knot on his finger as if it were a joke. Naomi shook her head once and then tilted her wrist toward me. The thread made a circle and glowed in the bulb light. Later, I washed dishes while the house settled. The kettle dried on the rack. In the back room, the loom kept its steady patience. I ran my palm along the beam and felt the tiny nicks that come when wood has seen work. I closed the door to the yard and turned the deadbolt with the easy turn of someone who knows where everything is. The porch light came on by itself. The street was quiet, except for a single bicycle and a cat that did not belong to anyone. The window held my reflection with the red thread behind my shoulder. I left it there and went to bed. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.